I'm not going to go, you'd be pleased to know I'm not going through the entire presentation again. But it's changed yesterday, so those that would be watching, and I think a few people do watch, and then they have access, the presentation has changed. As Mr. Packard said, we've been to all buildings but the high school. We were at the RTIRTC faculty meeting on Monday. What was that, third? I've lost track of days. Whatever day Monday, because people were watching this on Sunday, Monday won't mean anything to anybody, but third. January February 3rd. January, February, March, really doesn't matter. Anyway, so we have 185 surveys that have come back thus far, and we have not looked, I have not looked at the tally on purpose, because I want to make sure that everyone's surveys are in, and everyone that chooses internally to respond to those have had an opportunity to do so. Looked at a few of the comments, because Nancy has done a really nice job of, she intakes all the surveys as they're sent in, and then has typed every response verbatim, whether it was misspelled or not. It goes in just as it's presented. And so you can tell where we've been, and as I read through them, but I just was trying to get a sense of the initial response internally. So anxious to get to the high school and do that one. We're there on Tuesday of next week after school. We were supposed to be there Tuesday the 4th of February, but that didn't happen. So just to walk you forward a little bit, where we've changed the survey, the presentation, would remind people that might be watching, we've had the January Wednesday counts that have come in, so our enrollment is now at 4,043, kind of where we predicted. We talk time to time, how close are we to projections? Eerily close in a lot of places. The class sizes at the schools, you can see the difference between Mark Twain and Wyman and Truman. However, what we don't have at Wyman and embedded in these numbers are the early childhood special education students, which those are growing, and we just approved that half-time position because that seems to go between 40 and 60 students every year. Class sizes are still good, and we're still full at 17 sections of kindergarten. You approved summer school at our last board meeting, so we're going to be going forward with the early childhood special education, the early childhood summer school program, PK program. We are scheduled to meet back with this group here, the faith-based group, in March, once we get all the surveys internally taken care of and talk through some things with them. What is on here that I don't think was on here the last time we presented was the 4-year-olds over total numbers in each of their programs. And we actually added, talked with someone from Lutheran this week, or late last week as well, and we'll certainly invite them because they have an early childhood goal within their program as well. Talked about the 50% of 360, those students that have not been involved with pre-K programming of our 360 kindergartners, and we're trying to get to that 50% who have not been served. Of course, we would remind people that you as a Board of Education have done your homework. Most recently to see Nixa and Branson. We've stayed in touch with them, and a couple of our plans actually are closely related to Nixa and closely related to Branson in terms of discussion. And I would tell you at this point, I would tell anybody that they like to take me to task, I think, a little bit. I've been to 2 service clubs, and they really want me to go into some specifics about several things that we're really just trying to garner input on. Which of the 2 ideas do you like best, that you think best fit the district moving forward? Is it to build a building that's a standalone facility, or is it to repurpose and reconfigure our school district? There are variations on either theme that you have discussed, and we've discussed as recently as last October, but to put every single scenario in a survey or talk about it in public right now, all it does is confuse things. but they're still resulting in one of those two options. And so when we talk about a pre-KK facility, yeah, there's variations on this theme. For example, there are only 10 classrooms here for pre-K programming in this concept of 50,000 square feet, which is roughly the same size as Mark Twain Elementary School, within a couple thousand square feet. 10 classrooms, half-day programming is not a robust early childhood program. It will serve 4-year-olds, and it'll get us going. But when you see the sizes of the elementary schools and the 17 sections of kindergarten, we're also talking about this plus PAT plus early childhood special education in one comprehensive center. There are variations on this theme that you can certainly consider. That I'm open to consider. So these are not etched in stone. I would remind anybody at any time of that. But it's a way to move our discussion forward. When I started this discussion with you, it's time, I think, for us to start talking more specifically about the vision and how we move forward with early childhood programming. And this is where there are things in here that have been changed since the first presentation. The half-day programming with full-day Title I programming. People need to be reminded that Title I is a performance-based assessment that has nothing to do with socioeconomics. There are students that have learning deficits that we need to address, and we currently have Title I programming. Our discussion has been pulling that back and plowing a lot of that into the early pre-K program so that later on those services may be rendered not needed anymore, I guess. The after-school and before-school programming, we talked with the faith-based group. There was some concern there. That's why it says research and discuss. It may not be what happens, but it's something we ought to talk about. Particularly with the Title I kids. I suspect that most Title I kids aren't involved in any of those other pre-K programs. That's part of that 50% that aren't being served. The sliding scale is another one. A person would ask, well, if I'm a taxpayer in the community and I have kids that are in pre-K, why would I let my taxes be increased and have to go to a faith-based program because I'm not able to get into your pre-K program? And my answer to that is we're actually, like any other program we have in this school district, the better the district and the more opportunities we create for kids, the better it is for the community. And there are many programs that my own kids didn't take advantage of, but I gladly pay my school taxes because it helps somebody else. So if you're someone that's been in a pre-K program and your child is in kindergarten and there was someone that hasn't had pre-K programming, that teachers' efforts are taken away from moving that whole group of students forward because maybe there was a way that we could better serve students that were not prepared for kindergarten. So the sliding scale fee, I have examples of such, but that would be something once we decide, are we going to do a program that will even allow us to have something outside the boundaries of Title I, then we would start talking about that. And the Title I programming is, we receive funds for that. So that takes me a little further into the weeds, so to speak, than we're prepared to do, but it's just a discussion point at this time. And so you see the land acquisition, I want you to be reminded of the additional staffing. When we use the word approximately, we use the word approximately on purpose because it may not be that much. And the new facility projected cost of $11.2 million was based on that 50,000 square foot facility. And the other option that we discussed, similar to Branson, so that's NICSA. And remember, we also talked about FEMA dollars for storm shelter. Those aren't embedded in this on purpose because we don't have the money. We've certainly declared our interest in pursuing FEMA grant dollars for a construction of a storm shelter as part of this facility and as part of the reconfiguration of the district, which creates an opportunity at the high school too. So we have been to Mark Twain, and we talked about the pre-KK building being at Mark Twain, and that got their attention. I said that in here. I said that might not be at Mark Twain, but for the sake of discussion, we've remained consistent in that. And I think much to the chagrin of a few teachers in other buildings, the thought of moving to another building didn't necessarily excite them. And that maybe showed up in a couple of the comments as well. But we'll work through that if that's the direction we choose to go. So the 7th and 8th graders move, the 4th graders go to The middle school, two first through third grade buildings, which allow some of that crowding to be addressed, and we repurpose one of our existing facilities, and the ninth grade go to the high school. So when you look at this facility here, one of the questions I've heard a little bit is, well, why would you have to do the auditorium? Well, no, we don't. But I would also remind you and those 50 people that served on ad hoc committees, including the 10-year facility study, that put the auditorium on that facility study. If we don't do it when we have an opportunity to address their facility needs before we start the next 10-year facility study, then when are we going to do it? It's our responsibility to try to, we've knocked out a lot of the things that were recommended by that citizens group. It wasn't my plan. It wasn't Mr. Henshaw's plan. It wasn't your plan. It was our plan based upon feedback from a lot of people and a year-long study of facility needs. So it's here because it's the most efficient way to address an auditorium, and moving 300 kids to the high school without an auditorium and not being able to really take advantage of the FEMA grant dollars as a potential didn't seem to make the best sense. And moving it to another location on the high school campus makes it more expensive. So if you move this to a vacant lot on the south end of the end zone at the football stadium, it becomes a $8 million building. Mm-hmm. In addition, at a separate location, mobilizing a contractor twice as opposed to one location. So again, we're trying to make efficient. Is this where it has to be? Is this the way it's going to look? Well, no, but we've got other plans, but this is the one to stimulate the discussion that's on the presentation now. Same bullet points. Wouldn't want to be drug into knowing exactly what a sliding scale program is. I again would remind people that we have some ideas, but those we would need to discuss. The staffing is the same. The building here, $12.7 million. It's a slightly larger facility than the other. But again, we haven't decided which one. We've talked about the 30-cent voter-approved issue, the fraction here for 15 and 15, at 15 cents on the operation and 15 cents on the bond. The bond generates $10 million, and the levy generates $600,000. The $600,000 is less than half of the $1.3 million. So yes, we would have to look for efficiencies and repurpose money. We've done that before, but I would also remind you in a couple slides of what the appropriation recommendation from Governor Nixon would do for this, changing this scenario if it becomes reality. $10 million is not the total amount for either project, but we would do as we've done before and replicate use of capital projects funds to supplement the difference between what the bond would generate and what we would need. So again, just a way of people want to know what are these visions going to cost. It's a way to get the discussion moving. Of course, our levy, please remind everyone of this because of where it sits in relation to everyone else and what 30 cents does to our levy. People below us have lake money and assessed value far greater than ours except from the Neosho. Our levy hasn't been touched in 13 years. And I think we've done quite well living within our means. We've taken the levy, this is different, in bond and phased it in over 3 years, phasing in the levy over 3 years, excuse me, similar to what we've done in the past. And it does, that's what it does. We certainly wouldn't need it all at one time because of the way construction works and the way we would fully operate. So whether we would need the full amount even is questionable. And so we're trying to get started, and that would be the way that we would recommend doing that if we move forward. So in the foundation formula impact, I don't like to call it an increase in funding. I like to call it formula restoration because as Brent Gann reminded us in the presentation before the board meeting started, the formula has been $600 million underfunded, and the formula was enacted in 2005 with a 7-year phase-in. That formula wasn't kind to us, and it gets less kind to us, and the inequities in it are exacerbated as it's underfunded. It wasn't designed to be underfunded. Now, $278 million is a huge step in the right direction, And so what that means specifically for Rolla, should 278 run through the formula, is 1.39 million, which eradicates the need for a levy. So it significantly changes potentially our effort to add staffing in order to get to pre-K programming. That's huge.
That's real huge.
That is huge. So in my own editorial of the reaction to that proposal, I was cautiously optimistic. Obviously, we don't have the money, so it can't be spent. And it would be nice if we got it. And we have talked long about a self-sustained pre-K program that's not reliant solely upon grants that get pulled away, and therefore you're left with funding it yourself anyway. So I throw this out here to you as proposed for FY15 because I think that's very serious to us, very positive to us. And anything along the line from 278 to 0 is better than where we've been before. When we'll know that, you know, I think just the other day I read where, and you heard, that there certainly the legislature doesn't necessarily believe that this is doable, but I've heard that many times.
They put out their own targets.
So we're at the same spot we are every year. We'll just wait and see and try to plan a budget based upon uncertainties and stay conservative, and we'll see what happens in the end. So it's the same song, different year.
Different year.
Okay, so I'm reminding you at the bottom, the projected 1.3 million, that makes that a lot different.
I'm curious how that number works out.
What's that? So what I've asked people to do, particularly our internal staff and anybody that might be watching, is what we're about right now is trying to narrow the options. Certainly any variation on those two themes are there. What's the timeline from survey to opening the facility? It would be a dream to see that facility's doors open in the August of 2017. Be really, whatever the facility is, wherever it is. And working back from that, with the voters helping us in April of 2015 with something, it takes approximately a year to design and construct. So that's 16, taking us to 2017, which gets us ahead of the top 10 by 20 recommendation that we have pre-K programming in place. And what we're doing here will I think, merge nicely into the CSIP discussion that we've had. It's still our building. Those two goals remain with us, early childhood programming being a huge one for us as part of our last strategic plan, but which the facility study was part of it. So I've asked our staff to think beyond themselves a little bit. Some of the comments I've read are pretty specific to not wanting to move, or can we create fragmented early childhood programs. I use Washington as an example. They're building one classroom at 3 elementaries that are a far distance from their main campus, one classroom at 3 elementaries, and a smaller early childhood center standalone facility. So we had talked about adding on to each individual building, but is that the best thing? Does that provide us the best opportunity for kids? We talked about transitioning students through 3 buildings. Might be good for us because we can equalize class size and take care of staff development differently. But is that really the best thing for children to be and families to be transitioning that many times? So I asked them to think beyond themselves. It won't always be us in the district here, but how can we best meet the needs of children, as particularly the young ones, and set this district up for a long time to come. And I would remind people too that I don't have all the programming details because it's not my plan. It's our plan. So in order to fully understand, we have to keep engaging our community and our internal and external staff to hear what they have to say, and that process is all but one building from being complete. So anybody watching or anybody fearful that we're going one direction over the other, that's really not where we're at. And would entertain any questions.
So we've got one high school left to go, or we've got the high school left to go in terms of surveys.
And I'd be interested in how they respond since the freshmen.
I was kind of wondering, is there an opportunity for Sophie to talk to some of the students? I've kind of been doing my own quizzing over the last month, and got some really interesting answers about, what about the ninth graders at the high school. So I'm wondering if there's
Well,
something that Sophie and Dr. Pritchett could get together with the other leadership at the high school. I'd be curious to know what they think of the idea.
well,
particularly
I've
the
asked
one.
Dr. Pritchett to schedule me and Mr. Henshaw, Mr. Hounsome, an opportunity to meet with that principal advisory committee. We've done that many times before. I want to get through the high school staff, and then
Yeah.
absolutely would rely on Sophie to make sure she remembers that too. Get back to school, Dr. Pritchett
Let
knows
us know
that.
what all 1,200 of them think by next meeting.
Yeah.
Then your survey will go also out online.
Yeah, and once we get the survey gets refined from time to time too, just based upon feedback. I've asked all our staff members, does this survey make sense? Because really they have it in front of them as we're doing the presentation, so we can kind of explain, even though everything's the same, it would be difficult for a patron to just pick up the survey and answer it without the
seeing the
background
presentation,
information.
yeah.
So how much background information do you put in as I have stated to you, it's a 2-page survey, a 4-page survey with 2 questions. And so it's pretty daunting to pick up the paper and say, what does this mean?
Mhm.
And so it requires the explanation. And I would ask that anybody that wants us to speak anywhere, we'll go anywhere and talk about this.
Dr. Salas, the frame you had up there showing where our levy stands in comparison to the 30 on the Camden survey, to me, that's something, the more we can get that information out in the public to show, our current local tax levy is extremely low in comparison to communities of anything similar to us at all. And what this administration and previous boards, this board as well, have been able to get done with it. Teachers' salaries are, towards the top, administrators towards the middle, and that's all done with the lowest
Performance at the top.
performance at the top and levies near the bottom. And I think it's phenomenal.
Well, I don't like taxes any better anymore than the next person. I go back to what value do you get for the dollar, and the importance of a good school district to this community when you're trying to attract physicians, you're trying to attract businesses, you're trying to do a lot of things to make the community better. It's our responsibility to be the best we can absolutely be, because people want to know how good is your school.
That's right.
Whether we've given tours to folks that have been recruited here, we're happy to do that. So the better we are, the better the community is. And we've never been always the first one to do something. And early childhood programs have existed in this state far ahead of us, frankly, and it's been on our list, as I've pointed to you. In '96, it was an effort with us with all-day kindergarten, and finally getting rid of modular classrooms. And so, yeah, I agree with you, but it really doesn't matter what that says. The perception is
Right.
important too, and just want to respect everyone's opinion as we try to move this forward. We're just trying to do the right thing for the youngest students so that we can affect students earlier. Because we do a heck of a job with the at-risk programs. It would be nice, I wouldn't want to say this to Arthur Starnes, but it'd be nice to be able to render those programs out of commission, because we've done such a good job ahead of that. But I don't know. We got to get started. So RD, I hope you were taking copious notes.
I will make a comment concerning your formula slide, where we talked about us not being, not getting our full amount of what has been, what our formula calculates as. But we are budgeted to spend more money than what our revenue is bringing in. And that can't go on forever. Our balances are healthy, so we have planned to spend those balances down. But at some point in time, we need more revenue to balance that.
Yeah, this district is a formula district, and was the amount of money we received from the state exceeded what we received from local, and that's been inverted as a result. They talk about rewriting the formula. Well, we rewrite it because we rewrote it in 2005 because we didn't have enough money to fund the old one. The old one was equitable when fully funded. Now we don't have enough money. This one wasn't designed for equity, it was designed for adequacy. And who determined adequacy was the legislature at the time, based upon the average amount spent per pupil on those that were achieving high on the APR, annual performance report. So in my humble opinion, it was rounding to the mean. But we would gladly take what that amount was supposed to be.
Right, exactly.
And we'll take half of what.
And I will agree with you
And I
that there's
appreciate it.
opportunities there to take these funds, some of these funds, and apply those towards a program like early childhood
Right.
education.
That significantly changes our plan, potentially. So
Potentially.